What can we learn from fish when it comes to disruption in the economy? This is the topic of this podcast. It's the Not Even Wrong podcast. It's June 8th, 2020. This is Krim Delko. I'm sitting here in Land's End in San Francisco watching the ocean, and I'm blessed that I'm able to do that. The market is it's still market hours. We're looking at it's around 2 p.m. Eastern time right now. So we're up about almost 5% today, driven by Tesla. So that puts us in a sort of 59% for the year, and the S&P is down about half a percent. So we're outperforming a little bit shy than 60% for the year. As I said, this podcast is meant to give people a feel for what it's like to run a hedge fund, what it feels like, and what are the daily thoughts, and how are we actually doing what we're doing. So therefore, you will have episodes recorded in the middle of the day, so you get a feeling also what it means to be in the middle of the day. The market hasn't closed yet, so things can change. Right now, the news flow is, I think there's some good news out of China that the Chinese sales in May were pretty good for Tesla. I think overall the Tesla stock is driven by two things. One is fundamental improvement of the business, and the other is just the low interest rate environment, just driving money into high growth stocks. I want to talk about something that I came across this weekend. I thought I'd share it. It's a book by a professor of paleontology and microbiology, and I think also general evolutionary biology. His name is Neil Shubin. And just a little caveat, I'm going to talk to him later this week, but I thought I'll put this out now because it's still fresh in my mind, and then I can follow up after the conversation with him to be a bit more clear. Shubin is a paleontologist, so he goes and looks for fossils and stuff like that. But he has this interesting story about how fish came on land, or what were the first fish that came on land. And the question here is a lot deeper, and it really applies beautifully to disruption and the economy. The question is the big changes, the big dramatic phase shifts in evolution. How do they happen? And I believe they happen very similarly like the big phase shifts in the economy, or what we call disruption. When big things change, when new companies come from nowhere and start dominating existing markets, or most likely new markets. That's the analogy here, and the inspiration comes from Shubin's comments and books that he wrote about this. So let's go and set the stage. So we are about 380 million years ago. Everything is in water, land. There's no life on land other than, sorry, there's no animals on land. There's plants, there's stuff like that, but there's all the life, all the action is in the water. The water's full of stuff, crocodiles, some sort of dinosaur type creatures, really bad, bad type of scary creatures, big teeth, very competitive, unbelievably brutal place. The water is where it's at, but the competition is brutal. And then we have these first fish that figure, well, let me go and figure out what's it like to be on land. So they walk on land. The first fish walk on land, and they conquer land, and life on land, animal life on land starts developing, and the rest is history. Today we're sitting here, humans, as you know, descendants of those first fish that walked on land, and we dominate the globe. And hopefully soon we will dominate parts of space. So how is this possible? This is the question. Like, how did this even happen? I mean, did these fish develop limbs and lungs and all that kind of stuff that you need to survive on land? How did that happen? And I just like the analogy to when you look at companies like Amazon, Tesla, Microsoft, Apple. They came from nowhere. They were going against giants, and then all of a sudden they dominate markets. Like, did they have all the tools in place when they started? Did they have all the necessary combative tools that allowed them to win in the place? And what happened to all the incumbents? Why did they let them succeed? How did Walmart let Amazon even be founded? Why didn't they just kill them? Why didn't they just buy them? Why did IBM not kill Microsoft or buy them, et cetera, et cetera? I mean, the questions go throughout the more modern economic history when disruption has been more prevalent. And Shubin talks about, I think, a couple of very interesting facts. One is he says the first fish that came on land, they already had the tools. So he uses this beautiful quote by a female playwright by the name of Lillian Hammerstein, I think. I'm so sorry. Hellman, Lillian Hellman. Okay, I apologize. Lillian Hellman. So he uses her quote from her biography, which says something like, "Of course, everything starts way before we think it does." So this is the quote. What he's trying to say is that the first fish that came on land already had developed some sort of limb that was still part of their fins, but they were able to walk or move around at the bottom of the ocean. So the technology or the innovation, evolution had already developed. They were fish, lungfish. I think they even exist today. They were fish that had lungs and gills. So some of the key technologies that were needed for animals to survive on land, they were already existent in the water. And so that's the one thing. So the technologies were already there. It's just that the guys who first took the risk and came on land, they used them for different purposes, and that helped them conquer the land. I think this is unbelievably key. Take Amazon. The technology, the internet was already there. Bezos didn't reinvent the internet. He just used it for his own purposes. Lithium-ion batteries were there before Tesla was founded. They used it for their own purposes. Vision technology for AI was there before Tesla. They are obviously driving it and changing it and innovating on it, but they didn't invent that. So a lot of the technologies that are needed to disrupt markets dramatically are already there. It's the entrepreneurs that are able to repurpose them for their own means. And I think that is so beautiful. The analogy with the fish that already had lungs in the water. By the way, why did fish have lungs in the water? Well, there were some fish that they had gills and lungs because sometimes there wasn't enough oxygen in the water, so they had to go and get oxygen out of the air with lungs. And here's the other thing, and I think this is beautiful. That's something I'm going to drill a little bit deeper with Professor Shubin in a couple of days when I have a talk with him. But here's my conjecture. I think that the fish that came on land, they weren't the most competitive fish. They probably were even pretty low in the hierarchy. They weren't like the dominant creatures killing everything. They went on land because probably they didn't want to compete or they couldn't compete in the water. Take the lungfish. The lungfish, I mean, why is the lungfish even in need of lungs? Well, because he's probably not able to populate the oxygen-rich parts of water because that's where all the big sharks and all the bad stuff is going on. The really competitive rat race, the kill, eat, or be eaten type of business is going on. So the lungfish is probably more like your sideshow somewhere. Not really. It's the guy that sits in the back of the classroom that barely raises his hand, but he's got something. He's got some tools. He's got some technology, and he's got the will to go and say, let me try this land. And then he goes on land and starts conquering the land and develops animal life on land, which is a lot better than animal life in the water. You have a lot more options. And to finish this podcast, I want to indulge into a little bit of acting. So I want to mimic a conversation between two stock market analysts about 380 million years ago. And they're talking about, should we fund this fish that goes from the water on land? Should we fund them or not? So Mario is pro and August is against. Mario is the analyst that says, yeah, I want to give this fish a chance. This fish has a chance. And August is like, no way, he's a contrarian, it's not going to happen. So Mario goes like this. Listen, I'm buying the IPO of this fish. This fish has all the potential in the world to conquer land, and land is the new place to be because the ocean is way, way too competitive. I don't want to invest anymore in the ocean. August goes, Come on, why would you go on land? The market, i.e., the water, is a much bigger place. Why would I go on land? There's nothing to do on land. You can barely breathe on land. Okay, maybe you have some limbs that you kind of, you repurposed your fins for limbs, but come on, I mean, we can swim much faster in water. We can win races in water much better. Mario goes, listen, I know the valuation of this fish that is going on land is very high. But let me tell you something. There are things you can do on land that you can't do on water. You can grow plants, you can develop agriculture, you can cultivate other animals and eat protein in a much safer way than this constant rat race that we're exposed to in the water. In a nutshell, Mario is saying, listen, the competitiveness in the water is so dramatic. I'm willing to take a bet that this disruptor, this new guy who has the tools and the technology to probably conquer land, this new guy has promised. And if he conquers land, it could be a new market that is much, much bigger than the market we have in the water. And this is kind of the conversation. Now I'm back. I'm back. This was just me indulging a little bit in a role play. I'm back. It's me. It's June 8th, 2020 again. And I just want to finish by just reminding people that disruption, as defined by Clayton Christensen, starts with something that nobody else cares about. That's why it's possible. The incumbents don't care about the market that the disruptor is going after because it's either low end, not interesting, or maybe it doesn't even exist. Online commerce did not exist in the early 90s. It was not existent. So Walmart wasn't even going after it. Luxury electric vehicles did not exist when Tesla came to the market. They didn't take market share away from Daimler because Daimler wasn't in the business of luxury electric vehicles. And guess what? Luxury electric vehicles, or electric vehicles in general, are at the cusp of becoming the market. So these analogies are very beautiful. And I think they don't help us necessarily, make money on a daily basis, but they give us a cathedral. They give us a foundation to believe in and to think about and to withstand tough times. When we start doubting our thesis, we can go back to these analogies and think about nature, how nature has evolved, and we humans and businesses are nothing but another version of nature. And why should it be different with us? Thank you.